Welcome everybody to the live broadcast of our weekly Q&A. We're talking all things love today, well, and every day.
We're here with the celebrity Nate, who was just
Shut your face. Who's the celebrity? Who's the? Aren't you speaking in front of like 900 people this month?
Well, then I'll be the celebrity, but for today you can be the celebrity.
Okay, that's cool. I'm all right with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we should get started. Hang on, I need to fix something really quick.
Okay.
I just have all these windows open and they keep popping up in front of me, and it's a big distraction, and that's a no-no.
So I've upped my game. I dressed up for today's situation. What are we going to call this? What is this technically?
I just called it maybe we can just call it the Love Q&A series. I don't know.
Or
something awesome.
Like a webcast.
The Lovecast? Ooh, I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're so smart.
Thanks. So I've upped my game because here I have, some mood lighting.
Ooh.
Okay, so I have lighting. We have lots of people logging in. This is very cool.
I know. You ready should we just dive into our first question?
Dive in. What is it?
Okay, let's talk about something a little bit. I saw this question online this week, and I'm like, I'm going to use this for our little chat. I'd love to hear what you think about it, and then I'll give my opinion as well. But somebody asked the question in a Reddit forum, what do you consider initiating sex? And I think we talk a lot in broad terms about like, oh, you got to initiate sex. But what is initiating sex? It's a really broad term, yeah. I guess. So what would you consider from a female standpoint, initiating sex from?
So it's not
maybe for a woman or for a man.
It's not just like a poke, poke, poke. I'm here. I'm ready. Gosh, initiating sex. Well, I guess as if I'm going to take like the therapist point of view, initiating sex needs to be the agreed upon item, because I think oftentimes people think they're initiating sex and they're like, why isn't my partner responding to me the way I want them to respond? So, gosh, what is initiating sex? For some people, it's a little pat on the booty. Or a rub down, or, if your partner gives you that look while you're cooking, oh, I know what this means. Or they make you a mixed beverage. That's what my dad does. Sorry, Dad, I threw you under the bus, but you have to kind of grease the wheels. I think initiating sex is so different for everybody. I will say that I tend to hear more from women that if you want to initiate sex, gentlemen, you really need to be talking up your partner and showing genuine interest and connecting with them in an emotional way. The whole idea that a lady is like a crock pot that needs to be turned on in the morning and let her stew all day long so that she's hot and ready to go by the end of the evening, I would agree with that. So what do you think?
There's a pretty famous quote that says everything in your relationship is foreplay.
Weird. Who said that?
I don't know. You should tell me.
No, it's John Gottman.
I know it's John Gottman.
Oh, okay. I was like, I know who it is. I know. Yeah.
Great advice. Somebody answered on this forum, and I really liked their answer. And they said anything that can be turned down or rejected is initiation. If you can't be rejected, it's not initiating. I don't know if I agree with it or disagree with it, but I think sometimes maybe you think you might be dropping hints or like giving the look like Brittany said, which can be great. It can be like maybe hinting at the fact that you want sex, but it's not initiating.
Yeah.
I think initiating has to be something that requires you to take a risk and that could potentially be shut down. It requires you to kind of go out on a limb. It's doing something, taking an action that your partner could potentially be like, I don't know. If you guys have opinions or questions, I would love for you to drop them in the questions bar or in the comments. We're keeping an eye on them. So,
okay.
What do you think about that though? Like the potential of rejection?
Well, so what that reminds me of is this idea of the concept of turning towards your partner, that we are constantly making bids for our partner to connect in some way. And boy, we're getting a lot of love here. I'm winning though. A lot of these.
It's no surprise.
So you're making these bids for your partner's attention all day long. It just might be that bid is for that physical interaction, sexy time. So you have three ways in which you can respond to that. You can either turn towards your partner and say, let's get it on, baby. You can turn away from your partner and maybe ignore the fact that they just put their hand down your shirt. Or
That's a little hard to ignore, wouldn't you think?
you're just like, gosh, was that a cold breeze or or you can turn away or against your partner, which would be kind of just maybe scolding them for doing that, or telling them you're really not in the mood, in a harsh way, because you can absolutely turn your partner down, and it's not a way of turning away from them. You're just letting them know you're not in the mood, or maybe you need to be loosened up a little bit. So I totally agree, though. I like the idea of what you said. It was at Brittany that had said that it has to be something in which you can reject in order for it to be like a bid for that person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Laura Heck, you're so popular with everybody
I don't
today.
even know who's blowing me up, but maybe their mouse got stuck.
Okay, you ready for another question?
Yeah.
Or do you want to talk more about initiating?
I do want to say that one of the things that I absolutely love about initiating sex is that the two of you have a code word that you establish, that if you are making passes at your partner and they are just not cluing into it, you have a code word. It makes me remember that my partner, my girlfriend, who's not my partner, but my girlfriend, her code word with her partner is kumquat. So if he's not...
Kumquat?
Kumquat. It's a fruit. It's a fruit, but
it is a fruit. You're right.
It's a word that wouldn't come up in conversation very often unless you were ready for sexy time.
Now I'm trying to think of a good word to use. I'm thinking maybe Wiener Schnitzel.
Wiener Schnitzel?
Wiener Schnitzel. Is that a good code word?
Cost me some mustard for my Wiener Schnitzel.
I feel like that's a word that would do the exact opposite of what I would hope it would do.
Not at all.
I don't think it would get anybody in the mood.
No, it would make somebody giggle and then instantly want to have intercourse.
Oh yeah, Wiener Schnitzel. Oh yeah. I gotta remember to not make those sultry faces at you from last week.
I know, it just makes me blush, and then I don't know why I'm blushing, and then I start to get in my head, and yeah.
All right, okay, I got another question for you. This one's a doozy.
Oh boy.
So this guy says, I met this amazing woman. We connected on so many levels that I didn't think were possible between a male and a female. We met 2 months ago. Getting to know her better has been but she has some serious financial and health issues. She has 3 kids that she has 50% of the time. She's sick enough that having a job is not possible, and financially she's not doing so great. He says, I feel that the financial issues have killed the Twitter passion that I felt for her, and it's become more of a business relationship. She has no support from her family. Without my help, she wouldn't have the internet, which means that the kids can't do homework, and she also wouldn't be able to get a car out of the shop. So she's currently borrowing an extra car that he has and that he was wanting to sell. She has also relied on him a lot for emotional support, which he's grateful for and would expect in a relationship. He says, I like the fact that she trusts me with her emotions, but feels that the stress of the financial matters is causing him to not be there naturally for her. He's a naturally anxious person and wants help understanding what he should do with regards to, like, is this I don't know, kind of leave it open there. But it sounds like it's a young relationship. He's super into her, and also she's got a lot of health and financial issues, and it's taking a toll on the romance early on. Yeah. So what do we do?
Well, okay, so I'll just say it doesn't necessarily sound like it's taking a toll on the romance. It sounds like it's taking a toll on his ability to be a partner for her. So it kind of sounds as if he's taking on more of his...
A caretaker role?
Exactly. And we know that some people fall into those roles because that's what they did in their family of origin. That's what's most comfortable for them. It's a new relationship. There's a lot of really good connection. I guess something that came to mind listening to this was you can have an amazing connection with a lot of different people in your life, but you don't have to tether yourself to them in that way. And boundaries is, we all need boundaries. But if you
let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about boundaries. What are boundaries and why are they important? Because I think a lot of people in this room right now are probably clueless to what boundaries are and why they're important.
Okay.
Can I give you my definition?
Yeah. Let me ask myself a question and then answer it. Yes.
Well, I think it's an important thing to talk about. So I like using an analogy. If you look, like, let's look at the game of football. You've got in a game of football, you've got referees, you've got out of bounds lines, you've got end zones, you've got pads that you need to wear, and there's specific rules that you need to follow. And when all those things are in place, the game of football is a lot of fun. It's fun to watch, it's fun to participate in, and it works really well. But the moment that one of the referees stops making calls, or the moment that a football player doesn't wear his pads anymore, or disregards the out of bounds lines, it puts people at risk to get hurt, and the game can descend into chaos, and it stops working as a sport. And I feel like if we take the concept of boundaries out of sports and put it into relationships, the same consequences apply. So boundaries are essentially the conditions. They're the people talk about unconditional love. I believe unconditional love exists, but unconditional relationships do not. If you don't have conditions on your relationships, they become really healthy. You put yourself in danger. You can get really hurt, or you can hurt somebody else really severely. So anyway, I feel like it's really important to create in your relationship rules that allow you to operate in a really healthy way and protect yourselves from being hurt. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm going to leave that analogy. But
well, I'm glad that you put it in a football analogy. So we went from basketball, the Michael Jordan analogy. Now we're on to football. I totally agree. And I also think that the idea of just having boundaries keeps people safe. So we need to have boundaries around ourselves. So you have boundaries that you establish, that when you are with people, you establish how they are to communicate with you, how they are supposed to treat you as an individual. But then we also have boundaries around our relationships, keeping other people out of those relationships. I think often, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but in families, you need to, as husband and wife, create a boundary around yourself that excludes your children. And I think that most people would say, that excludes your children. But the only way to maintain a healthy relationship that is going to stand the test of time, the stress of raising children, is if you put some sacred boundaries around your relationship, giving yourself date nights, having the children know when is special time for mommy and daddy to have alone time, and being able to talk, and whatever those might be. So boundaries. Lots of good things. There's actually a book that comes to mind. It's called Boundaries.
It's a good book.
Have you read it?
I have it sitting on my bookshelf right now. Yeah, I haven't read the whole thing. I've read a big chunk of it. It's really good.
Yeah. So it is a good book, and I don't usually finish books, but I thumb through them, and I've definitely given it to clients before, and they have loved it. So if anybody's interested in boundaries, that's a good one to start reading.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'll lead off. But that was a segue from the original question that was a bit of a doozy about this relationship. And I think the only thing that I could say is that there are people in this world that will take as much as they possibly can from an individual. And it's really your own responsibility to be able to set your boundary of what you're willing to give. So if this man or woman, whomever he's speaking or she's speaking about with this relationship that is so new, if they're willing to put it all out there and to be with that person, then cool, go for it. But if it feels overwhelming, then he probably needs to establish some boundaries, some healthy boundaries around himself.
Awesome. I also think that it's worth mentioning, it sounds like this relationship is really young.
Yeah.
And there is a big difference between so there's a word called limerence that often gets confused with love. Limerence is that state of twitterpation, that chemically, that moment when you're in a relationship where your body, your brain is flooded with chemicals like a bunch of endorphins and serotonin and dopamine, and you just like can't get enough of the person you're with. And during that time, it's really easy to overlook people's flaws because you're just so happy all the time, or you're willing to overlook the potential pitfalls that could happen in a relationship. And so the state of limerence happens early on in the relationship, and it sounds like this guy could be in a state of limerence, in that state of twitterpation, and he could be overlooking some potentially harmful.
I would actually disagree.
Would
Are you
you?
ready for that?
I would love for you to disagree.
I think I would disagree that the fact that he's even asking states that
He's not overlooking it.
He's not overlooking it. I think that
That's
he
a good point.
sees it. I wrote down limerence. That's my word of the day today. I'm going to write it on my toilet paper so that my husband can see it as well. And I'll tell you about that later. Writing on toilet paper, a little something I like to do sometimes.
You write on toilet paper?
Well, there's so much good time that's spent privately in the bathroom that you want to make sure that people see important things, like the word of the day. But
I love how this theme kind of just comes up every time we talk. The first time we talked, it was the poop colored glasses.
I know.
Yeah, now it's all right. So it's good.
I'm gonna the soft serve ice cream, which I don't think you were
soft serve ice cream
thing that I was, but I was thinking it.
Totally.
So I think he sees it. I just that's why I would say more healthy boundaries. But I would agree in the early stages of a relationship, this idea of having sort of what do they call it? Honeymoon phase, where you overlook really important things. Is that Gronkowski? Who am I looking at? Okay, so what's another question?
That's another. Let's dive in. Let's see here. What do we got? I want to go over some more of your relationship myths. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, myth. Couples in a good relationship do not argue.
Myth. True.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's that? Why do you think people think that? And then let's talk about.
Well, I just think that people in general think that you can't have conflict in a relationship in order for it to be healthy or happy. You can absolutely have disagreements, and you're two totally different people. And if you find that you are avoiding disagreements because they end up, hurtful, that you get your feelings hurt disagreeing with one another, that you can't have your own opinion or belief, then I think it's good that you build in some skills around how to argue amicably. But absolutely, healthy, happy couples disagree all the time. And I mentioned this the last time we talked, that it's really healthy. And I kind of wanted to go back to that and just mention that it is healthy for your children in a relationship to be able to view you as adults disagreeing about something.
Give me an example here. Why is that important?
Why? Well, because kids need to be able to see how you can disagree and how you can have a difference of opinion and solve your problem without going into your reptilian brain, or what you call your brain.
That really scared me a lot.
I know. So here's the problem that I'm finding with Blab is that if you have a little bit of like ADD like I do, there's so much going on the screen that I'm just like trying to read things.
I'm getting distracted.
Yeah, I'm also talking at the same time. It's just really tough. Okay,
so let's talk. We're talking about fighting. So why is it good? Yeah. It's good for kids to see their parents argue and resolve an argument, not just argue and like storm out on each other.
Exactly.
I think that's great. I think it shows it gets a demonstration of healthy conflict management. It shows that it's okay to disagree. It probably also teaches good conflict resolution skills. I think it doesn't say in the 7 principles for making marriage work that conflict can actually be the source of closeness for you. Like you can actually use conflict to bring your relationship closer together if you do it the right way, as opposed to driving you apart.
Yeah, absolutely. You could be like two ships passing in the night where you are just like avoiding any conversation with that person. You're walking on eggshells, but the moment that you actually dive into something that matters so much to you, that you are able to hold your own and say, this is how I feel about this, and it may be different from how you feel about it, but you're important to me enough for me to be able to talk to you about that. You can absolutely bring you closer together. And that was a challenge that I had recently, actually, was to have couples to actually sit down and argue, have a conversation about something that you disagree about. Of course, you need to have some good conflict management skills to do that in order to bring it closer. I might have just been ripping the Band-Aid off for some people, who knows, but yeah, it is kind of fun to argue, isn't it? Sometimes.
It can be when you're arguing with somebody who is good at it and won't just like freak out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's worth noting another statistic: 69% of marital conflict is unresolvable, meaning it never goes away. Like, your in-laws never disappear. That's a conflict that's going to come up over and over and over again, and you need to learn to manage it. Like, I think there's something to be said about being taught your entire life for like the first 20 some odd years in life. You go through school and you're given problems and they all have a solution. It's like, here's a math problem, here's the solution, here's an essay, there's a certain structure to the essay and a certain structure to the way it, like, you answer a question or structure a sentence. There's certain answers on a history test that are right or they're wrong. And then you get in the real world, and in relationships, the majority of the problems that you come up against don't have a right or wrong answer. It's something that you need to figure out, and the problem, once it's solved, it often doesn't go away. It keeps coming up, and you have to learn to manage the problem instead of solve the problem.
Yep.
So,
you know, it's interesting. That takes me back to that question about that relationship that this gentleman is just entering into, is taking a look at what are the things that are a part of who this human being is, because they will always be there. What are the personality characteristics of this person? You can't change those personality characteristics. You can learn to live differently. So if you decide to move in with somebody and you say, you know what, this person is just, they're always going to be a morning person. They wake up early in the morning, and I'm a night owl. And can I live with this? And how can I manage this difference between the two of us? So if this person is trying to figure out, is this something, a relationship that I want to stick with, is probably figuring out what is the 69% of this person that is unchangeable, and what is it that we can negotiate and change. That would be.
I love it. That's a great mindset to have. We just got a question in the chat that says, who should be the boss in a relationship?
The woman. Just kidding. What happens if it's two men? No, who should be the boss in the relationship? There isn't a boss in the relationship.
That's what I was going to say. There isn't a boss. If you've got a boss in the relationship, your employee will quit.
Yeah.
unless you're a really good boss.
That's right. You just make the other person feel like they're the boss all the time, and really you're winning. No, I think you take turns being the boss. Yeah. This came up today. So I posted this week on the Lovumentary podcast an interview with Gary Chapman, the guy who wrote the 5 Love Languages, and he told this really interesting story about how the love languages came to be, like how he got the idea. And he told this story about how when he was a newlywed, they'd been married for a little while, and he actually had that moment where he woke up and he's like, I think I married the wrong person. Like, I'm just not happy. And they were fighting and they were bickering, and it was obvious that their expectations were super different. And I'm like sitting here listening to Gary Chapman, this guy who wrote like the best-selling love advice book in the world. I'm like, you went through this crap? Yeah. But he talked about how he realized how he saved his marriage, and essentially what his words were that he was studying. He's a pastor, and he was in seminary. And he started to realize, like, how am I going to go teach people for the rest of my life about hope and love? And if I don't have hope and love in my own relationship for my own wife. Yeah. And so he prayed, and he had this idea, if I'm going to get a little Jesus-y on you, but his story is that he had this thing come to mind where he's like, Jesus said, if the people who are supposed to be the greatest leaders are supposed to be the greatest servants. And so to answer the question, he took this approach, and he's like, okay, so if I want my wife to really love me, instead of like telling her how to do things and telling her what I expect out of the relationship and how she should be a good wife, instead maybe I should focus on taking care of her and serving her and finding opportunities to like make her happy. So we started asking her these questions every day, what can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I be a better husband to you? And she started answering, and he started to realize, oh, like when I empty the dishwasher and vacuum the living room, she's really happy. And then she tells me, he's like, wow, I really like being told
thank you and how much I'm appreciated. And she really likes it when I do things for her. And he's like, oh, words of affirmation, acts of service. Those are, and then he started thinking, okay, are there other ways that we can demonstrate love? And that's how the 5 love languages came to be, was in his effort to save his marriage. So in answer to the question, I would say if you want to have a boss in the relationship, that's awesome. But the boss is going to be the servant. Like, that's the type of boss you need to have, is the person who enables the other person's happiness, the person who's like working really hard to serve and uplift and find opportunities to take care of their partner. So,
Nate, high five.
mm.
Thank you, Gary Chapman, for that story. That is just, I love it, and it just helps to remind me. You know, I'll give an example. This week was a tough one. Remember how we've talked about saying yes to your partner?
Yeah.
I'm going through.
Was it a hard week to say yes?
It was a tough week. Once again, my husband is he's looking for a vehicle, and we're getting closer to buying.
He wants that Porsche, doesn't he?
He wants the Porsche. No, he actually wants a BMW. I know that this just he works so hard, and I so want to give it to him. I just want to say, whatever you want, I'll cut corners in other directions. What is it that you want? Let's make it happen. And I'll tell you what, the moment that I started to join in and say, hey, you know, truth be told, I called a dealership. And I was just like, hey, when are you guys open? Can we come and take some test drives? And just by telling him that I had done that little bit of research to honor him and his request and his want, he was floored by it. And I'll tell you what, that guy emptied the dishwasher. He did. He took the baby downstairs for an hour so I could sleep in. And I really believe that it's like, you serve your partner first and just see what happens. They will join in and follow suit. And it's kind of incredible, rather than thinking about what can I do for myself, if you're thinking about what can I do for my partner, they'll always be thinking the same for you. How do we have each other's back? Anyway, we're off on a tangent, huh?
No, that's a beautiful tangent. I love it. Real life examples.
Yeah, someone wants to know, why does he want a BMW? Well, I don't know. It's fast. That's pretty much it. He wants a fast car.
It's a nice car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. Preston kind of had an addendum to his question. He was the one who asked who should be the boss, and he said, what about the head of household?
Oh, I see that.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer this one because I'm not married, but you are. So how do you guys work it? And it could be different for everybody. Yeah. And I guess.
And that's true. It is different for everybody. I think that it's a conversation that needs to happen, or maybe it's not a conversation. I think of marriage as almost being like you're running around a track, and you have all of these hurdles that you have to jump over. I don't know what event that is. Hurdles. Yeah.
Hurdles. That is hurdles. Or steeplechase. Also another jumping sport.
Yeah. So I imagine that with every hurdle that I jump over, I don't have to jump over that hurdle again. It's in the past. We've had that conversation. So the first couple of years of marriage are probably a lot of hurdles that you have to overcome, a lot of conversations that you have to have, a lot of negotiation. My official title is home base commander. So I am the head of household in that sense as home-based commander, and I'm also social coordinator. So I have a couple of titles. I think it's fun if you can talk about that and figure out, what is your title? I don't know what my husband's would be. Moneymaker, dad of the year, I don't know. But it's so different for every household.
I love it. I love Preston's questions. He keeps asking great questions. He just said, do you feel that women have more control now in a relationship?
Oh boy.
I feel like there needs to be, this is why I like having these conversations. This is why I like having the podcast and teaching workshops. Mm-hmm. It's because I feel like it's time for us to kind of go through a relationship revolution where we rethink what a relationship really is. Yeah. And we were all raised, I'm assuming everybody else was raised in a culture that he who cares the least has the most power. Like if you don't care very much about the other person, then you have more power because you don't care what happens with the relationship, and they're the ones who's like trying to make you happy, and they're the one who's trying to please you, and they're the one who's trying to like, I don't know. So
Wow.
that's kind of the culture that we were raised in, and so people often play hard to get, or like you wait between responding when you're dating so you can create this kind of desire and play this game, and so you can have the upper hand. Oh, if I act uninterested, he'll try higher or try harder. And I just think that's a load of BS. Like I sat down a couple of months ago, I sat down with this couple in Georgia, and they were in their 80s. They'd been together for over 60 years. And they had told me all these stories. They were both really successful in the medical industry. One was like one was a surgeon, and the other one was like one of the first female pediatricians. Just a really interesting story. And I asked her at the end of our conversation if she could give one piece of love advice, what would it be? And this is probably the most popular love and profound love advice I've ever received. And she said, "Don't be afraid to be the one who loves the most."
Yeah.
And it's so contradictory to what we typically hear in society. Like, oh, you got to play hard to get. Oh, you got to make her want it. Da 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 da. And here's this woman saying, like, go be vulnerable. Be the one who like puts it all out on the line, because then you're not going to have regrets. Then you're going to walk away, and you're going to like, you can't have amazing love if you're not willing to take a risk and be the one who puts it all out there. So as far as like trying to have control, I would just say surrender the control and just be the one who loves the most. So, but yes, go. I'm volleying to you.
Well, so gosh, it's tough because I would never want to be, I'm in this like comfort zone of my Mr. Forever, but I just wouldn't want to be in your shoes where you're still looking for that person. And
thank you.
How do you feel? You're welcome. How do you feel about putting it all out there and just being vulnerable with the people that you meet? Do you feel like you have to hold back until you have this established trust with that person, or can you just go ahead and lay it all out there and be the one that's like, you know what, I'm ready for love? That's actually a show. It's a good reality show. Juicy.
I'm ready for love. Ready for love.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Okay.
It's a scary thing to do, but I don't want to change my game for everybody else. Like, it's really interesting. I've dated girls who, when I do really nice things for them, they see it as like, oh, he's being desperate and he's over the top and he's trying too hard. And then I've seen other girls who, when I go out and do really nice things for them or perform an act of service, they're super appreciative and they feel really lucky. And it's really interesting how somebody's interpretation of your actions can define your opinion of who they are. Yeah. And how my intention is, so I'm trying to do this thing right now as a human being. I'm trying to develop this skill of, when I think of somebody or when I think of something, I just take action as quickly as possible. So if I think of a friend, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to text that friend and say, hey, I was thinking of you. Or if I think, hey, so-and-so would really appreciate like a movie ticket, or I need to go to lunch with somebody, I like reach out to them in that moment as quickly as I can before the idea leaves my brain and take action. And that's how I try and show up in my relationships. If I'm like, oh, so-and-so would like really love it if I surprise them with like this, I don't know, like a surprise date to go do her favorite thing. Like, I'm going to do that thing. And some girls interpret that as like, oh, he's desperate and he's too over the top. And some girls interpret that as, oh, that's really cool that you're so sweet and attentive and thoughtful.
Yeah.
So I think how people respond to your authentic self says a lot about who they are as a human being.
Boom.
So
I think you nailed it, because I was just thinking about this idea of playing games, or trying to figure out, like, if I show up in this relationship or with this person and I'm somebody other than who I really am, if I'm not authentic, or if I have a guard up or whatever it might be, then that person's going to be responding to this other human being that's not truly you. So if you're a lover, and if you are someone who is really authentic and you love to do acts of service and you like to just tell people what you think about them, they're going to respond to that person. And how else are you going to know who they are unless you're both showing up as authentic people? Gosh, dating
is rough, but you know what? I stopped playing the games, and so here's my philosophy on dating is it's a sorting process.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, like there's a woman out there for every man, there's a man out there for every woman, or a man out there for every man, or woman for every woman, depending on which team you're playing for.
Or man, man, woman, woman, man,
right.
woman, man. Yeah.
But I think you need, most people would do well to think of dating as like a sorting process. How can you get through the unqualified people as quickly as possible so you don't waste your time on them?
Yeah.
So you can find the people who are ready for whatever it is you're ready for.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to be really authentic right out of the gate and say, hey, you know, I'm looking for a serious commitment. I'd like to get married one day. I want to have a family. I want to have kids. What are you looking for in a relationship? Really curious. And I've met girls who are like, oh, you know, I'm just looking to date around. I'm like, great, that's awesome. Obviously, we don't have the same relationship goals right now. If that ever changes, and I'm around, love to take you out. But for now, like, why would you waste? I see so many friends waste their time. They get so excited about one person they're attracted to that might be interested in them, and they like spend months like dating them and investing in them and like being physically intimate with them. And then 3 months down the road, she realizes, oh, he doesn't want kids. Yeah. Or, oh, he doesn't want to, she doesn't want to get married. She wants to like wait for 5 years to finish school or develop a career before she wants to get married. And they're like, crap, I'm attached. And then they spend even more time like trying to change the other person's mind and change what they want. And it's just such a waste. So much easier to just get in there and like, I think it's really much easier to get in there, say what you want. If the other person doesn't want what you want, then you go, great, that's fine. I'm going to go find somebody else who does. And my results have been much better. I say no a lot more, but then when I do end up finding somebody to date, the results are much more awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you know, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking about is it's taking you how long to get to this point in your life where you feel like you understand your true, authentic person. As I kind of feel like we just, especially in middle school and high school and even in college or those years post-grad, whatever it might be, that you are trying on all of these different personas. You're trying to figure out, who is my authentic self, and do I feel confident enough to stand on who I really am? There's a lot of media out there, a lot of other people that are trying to tell you who you should be, what you should look like, what you should care about, and you're kind of having to try on these different hats and figure out, who am I? What resonates most with me? And once you figure that out, hopefully you're able to be authentic like you, Nate, and be able to say, this is what I'm looking for. This is the person I am. Take it or leave it. And somebody else out there who is also in their authentic self can say, you would be a good fit. I would like to try you on for a while, whatever it might be. Yes, please.
I would like to be tried on.
Oh, so I don't know where I'm going with that. I don't really have any ending comments. I just like to talk out loud.
I like it when you talk out loud.
Thanks.
And judging by all the applause that you have, other people like it when you talk out loud too.
Oh, geez. Okay. Well,
you're not just another pretty face.
Oh, thank you, Nate. What other questions do we have? Oh, somebody asked, where is Laura? Laura is in Salt Lake City, Utah. Oh, how long should you wait for sex?
Ooh, I love this question.
Oh, why don't you answer it?
So, interesting study. If you look up Wendy Walsh's Google, she did a talk at Google, and she wrote a book called Slow Love. No, it's called The 30-Day Love Detox. That's what it's called. And she talks about this really interesting concept. She says that I need to find the actual study so I can source it, but I'm kind of like quoting her, quoting it. And essentially what she said is that the study said like couples who meet and have sex within a month of each other have a 10% chance of being together after a year. So a 90% chance of breaking up. And if they meet and have sex within the first 3 months, that percentage goes up to 25% of being together or 75% of breaking up. And she said there's never been anybody who came out and said there is a time limit that is waiting too long. I think intimacy is really important in a relationship. And I also think that intimacy is like the icing on the cake. It makes the cake better, but nobody wants a cake that is just icing. If you do, that's gross. So I think it's different for every single couple. So I'm not saying like you need to wait 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, but I do think it's interesting that if you look generationally, if you go back 2 or 3 generations to our grandparents and great grandparents, like they pretty across the board waited till marriage or till they were in a really serious relationship. And then our parents were kind of in the mindset of like, oh, you got to wait like 6 or 7 dates till you're probably like officially dating, and things kind of go on a little ways. And now like the price of sex has been diluted to, or the value, or just like having sex has been diminished to a carefully worded text, like DTF question mark. And it's just like,
I hope everybody knows what DTF means.
me too, because I really don't want to explain it. So as far as how long to wait for sex, I personally, as a man who is single right now, I think it's important to like not, it's up to you in your relationship, but I think it's important to not rush it and to really get to know the person for who they are, find out if you're compatible or not, and then kind of maybe move into the physical side. I think having a physical relationship is not as the foundation of your relationship is doesn't make your relationship super stable oftentimes. And I know there's exceptions to every rule. There's no such thing as universal love advice, but that's my personal stance.
Oh, I'll give my personal stance also. I don't think that you can go backwards. So once you have established a relationship with someone and you've had intercourse, and that's, I'm differentiating between sex and intercourse. Once you have taken that relationship to that level, it's very difficult to go back and experience the same amount of pleasure and the same amount of excitement and anticipation of making out with somebody on the couch while watching a movie, or touching somebody for the first time. I remember in grad school, so I'll tell you this story. So in grad school, we had to, it was a sex class that I took. Human sexuality, I think, was the course. And we had to write about our sex history. And I had the pleasure of going back into my memory bank and writing about my first sexual experiences. And it was incredible what happened. So interestingly, the teacher was talking about, I want you to actually put pen to paper as opposed to typing it out, because there's an experience kinesthetically that happens when you are physically writing the way in which your body remembers things. And so I'm writing about my very first sexual experiences, something as simple as being like in the 7th or 8th grade and holding hands with a boy and him trying to cop a feel or whatever it might be, right? So something really simple and small and young in my life. But what happened was that I started to feel things inside of my body and remember feelings and thoughts. And it was incredible because I had not had those thoughts or feelings since I was that age, and I can't go backwards now. So the first experience of holding hands with somebody, first experience of making out, touching my first penis, whatever it might be, you can't go backwards. So I would say take it slow and experience, give yourself the opportunity to like taste the cake one bite at a time. You're getting blown up by all of these. Anyway.
Somebody's giving me props. We got to keep you caught up.
Okay.
The chat's going crazy too.
I know, I can't. We had a girl in middle school that did that.
I think anyway, that's really interesting. I love your story.
Okay, let me just clarify. 7th grade was holding hands. Okay. If you thought I was talking about losing my virginity, for the sake of my father ever watching this, it was on my wedding night. And with my husband. Wouldn't that be funny if it was on my wedding night but not my husband? Not funny. Anyway.
No, that would not be funny. All right, come on. Let's not joke about that.
All right, no. That's another question. Do we have any other?
Oh, you want me to ask? You want me? Does anybody? We got like 100 people in this room. Does anybody have a question you want us to talk about? Mm,
I do love to talk
I
about
want
sex
my
and
baby back.
sexuality. Money.
Money, money, money. Um, I actually really want to have David York on here to talk about money. So I gave a TEDx talk a couple of months ago, and there's this dude who came on and talked about. I don't even know how do I don't know if we should dive into this right now. Should we?
What
I
about
just don't
money?
feel like I'm qualified. I don't feel like I'm qualified to talk about money, but there's this really awesome dude who shared something really cool. Um, Maybe we should just have him on. I'm going to see if I can get him on next week to talk about money. So come back next week to talk about money.
Okay.
Deal?
So,
Is that a deal?
good deal. I'll be here.
Good.
Um, Alex asked a question, and Alex
Oh yeah,
asked
can you
about
define love? And at what point did you start loving yourself? Is that the question you're looking at? Are you
yeah,
thinking of the answer?
yep, I am defining
Uh,
love. Boy,
Defining love is like that's I don't think there's it's different for everybody.
yeah,
And like I can love pizza and I can love Laura Heck and I can love my girlfriend and I love them all differently. So I feel like that's kind of a I don't feel like the English language is adequate to really create an honest definition of what love really is.
but as far as loving yourself, I think that that part's tough. I will say that my parents were the number one influence on loving myself. I remember from an early age having my parents teach me what it's like to love yourself and how it is to accept yourself for what your worth is. So I guess when did I start loving myself? From the get go. My parents were amazing at teaching me how to do that. How about you? When did you start loving yourself? Do you love yourself?
I love me so much. Do you want to see how much I love me?
Yeah. Oh, you are handsy too.
Was that hot?
Yeah, it was kind of hot, a little mild.
I think it's pretty ridiculous.
That is. But did you go through tough
uh,
times of not loving yourself?
I don't think I ever really had a conversation about loving myself until the last couple of years. I've really kind of come into like an understanding of why it's important and what it means. And I think love is a lifestyle. It's a skill set that you develop. I think a lot of people think it's a feeling. I disagree. I think the feeling part is part of what love is, but I don't think that feeling that you feel is love. I think it's an effect of love. So as far as loving myself, I think I realized there's a point where I realized that like the way I talked about myself, the way I treated myself, the way I spent time on myself and invested in myself, if I wasn't doing that in a way that was similar to the way that I would invest or treat or talk about somebody that I really cared about, then I wasn't loving myself. And so when I realized that there's like an actual practical application of love, I think that's when my relationship with myself really started to change. So, or like forgiving
Interesting.
myself. I think growing up, I had a really big guilt complex. I was raised in a really religious culture where there's a lot of pressure to be like, I want to say perfect. And I created this story in my head that I had to be a certain way, act a certain way, speak a certain way to be worthy of love. And when I realized that, like, regardless of who I was and how I acted, that I could display love for myself and I could forgive myself of my shortcomings, I think that's when the switch changed. And that's when I started like really developing myself as a man and as a human being. And I think that's when I found out that it was okay to be vulnerable with people and talk about your weaknesses. And I think that's when I started being more authentic about what I wanted in relationships. And so that was kind of like for me personally, a catalyst for personal growth is like really learning what does it mean to love yourself and then putting that into practice.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. I'm glad you figured it out because I like the man that you are now.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I like that you like the man that I am now.
I like you and your imperfections.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I like that there are all these people who are watching us talk about our imperfections, and I don't feel one little bit bad about it. Kelly Frazier, we love you. I don't know who
Oh,
you are, but it was hilarious. We'll connect later. That's super sweet of you.
here we go. Ask Laura. I can read Smash TV radio comments. Ask Laura her thoughts on oral sex. Here's my
Hey,
thoughts.
Laura, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on oral sex?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Let me answer those. I think that oral sex is an awesome way to enhance your physical experience in the bedroom. Yeah, that would be a penis in your mouth, Nate.
It was imaginary.
Yeah, so I think that oral sex is great. I do think that, gosh, so we just talked about how you can't necessarily go back. So let's just say you're in a relationship, you dive in both penis first. How about that? You dive in penis first and you have intercourse on the first date. And now you're 3 months down the road, and now you have kind of skipped over some of the really fun, smaller steps in intimacy that it's tough sometimes to go back and explore with. I had friends that chose to have oral sex for several years, probably about 8 years before having intercourse. And it's still a really important part of their sexual chemistry, and they still have a lot of oral sex. So I think you should do it if you like it. And I think that it can definitely enhance your physical play.
Read the book She Comes First.
Oh, how do you spell the comes part? Is it COMES? Okay, because we're on that conversation.
It's a man's guide to pleasing a woman. If you want to know about it's a very tasteful instruction manual of basically pleasing a woman.
Oh boy. I'm not gonna. There's another question here about anal sex.
Yeah. Well, we can ignore the inappropriate comments by 14-year-olds who are trying to be ridiculous. What happens to love after a wedding? That one's been popping up a lot.
Okay.
I feel like Amir really, really wants us to answer that.
Okay.
So maybe we should.
What happens to love after the wedding? It blossoms. It grows. I don't know. I think that you go through. I will say that I don't think that love has to have that demarcation of a wedding in order for it to have a growing or I do think that there's a natural letdown period for some people who blow the wedding portion up so much that it's the focus of planning, it's the focus of a lot of romanticizing of that one day. And there can be almost a depression that occurs immediately after the wedding. But as far as what happens to love, what happens to a love over time, I think that it can deepen if you spend time focused on your relationship and deepening your connection.
I have a thought.
Yes.
So one of the interviews we did for the Lovumentary podcast was with this couple, Reed and Aline Whitesides. Super great couple. They'd been married for over 70 years. They got married in their teens and early 20s and were in their 90s when I interviewed them. And one of the things that they said, this is just to kind of go along with your love gets better as the years go by. So they said that in the course of their 70-plus year marriage, they had years that were really rough. Mm-hmm. But they're like, in the long scheme of things, let's say you are married for 70 years, 5 or 6 rough years, it was really good odds. Like if you only have 5 or 6 good years out of 70, that's a lot of
good years or 5 or 6
or bad years. My apologies. Yeah. 5 or 6 bad years out of like 60 or 70 years of marriage. Yeah. You're like, that's pretty sweet percentage of good to ratio of good to bad years.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really easy to when you get married, you're like, I'm committing to you for the rest of my life, in good times and in bad, richer and poor, sickness and health. And then the sickness and health and the bad times, or the sickness and the bad times and the poor come. And we're like, what am I going to do? And it's like, you know what? If you have one shitty year, it's okay. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. If you really push through, I think the couples who have the extraordinary love push through the rough like brutal years that may consist of infidelity or bankruptcy or like losing a child or like really horrible sicknesses, hospitalization, if you can push through that and come out on the other side, holy crap, how much more amazing is your love? And so I think there's something to be said of like really sticking with it through the rough stuff. And even if it is a year or a year and a half of difficult times, like have the trust in yourself and in your partner that you made a good decision out of the gates and that you can find happiness on the other side and work your way out of the pit. So
I'm with you. And in honor of that, I'm going to sing a song. How deep is your love? How deep is your love? That's all I got. Yeah. So question is this a regular show? As of the last week and this week, it sure is very regular.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
Every Tuesday.
Coming straight at ya.
There's one other question and then we can sign off. Lola, is it possible to have a healthy relationship when being 35 or older and most of adult life single? So I think she's asking, is it possible to have a healthy relationship being older than 35 or older? Yes.
Is it possible to have a healthy relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, here's a little...
Preston, stop being so negative.
This is my own personal belief is that, okay, so let's just say, for instance, that the male brain is not done fully forming until they're 25 years of age. This is a statistic that my father actually used to tell me when I was younger, and it turns out that it's true, that it takes longer for that male brain to complete forming. And I'll stop saying male, but I do just mean male brain, because that's the only
That's okay. My brain's not fully formed. I get it.
Okay, so if it takes a while for that brain to fully form, and it takes a while for us to figure out who our authentic self is, it's probably a pretty good idea to wait longer in life until you truly know who you are to decide who you're going to partner with. If you're somebody,
do you see this right here?
I can't. I just see your amazing biceps.
That's the love bomb that's the knowledge bomb you just dropped.
Did I just drop that knowledge bomb?
You just dropped that knowledge bomb.
Cool. So I think it's actually better to
Sorry,
wait.
I interrupted you.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
Grow up.
So wait longer before having a relationship. And, everybody kind of feels differently if they are going to have one partner for the rest of their life. I think what we're finding is that we have a lot of people that are choosing to be serial monogamous, that by the end of their life, they've had 2 or 3 or 5 partners that they've chosen to marry. So maybe wait a little longer. And then I think, Lola, you're going to have a very healthy relationship if you're 35 and older.
L-O-L-A-La-O-La. La 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 la. Dan 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 dan.
Should we make our theme song right now?
No.
No. Okay.
Okay, guys. If you have more, should we sign off? Do you want to answer more questions, or should we be done?
No, let's sign off, and then I'll see everybody next week, Tuesday.
Guys, follow us on Blab. We're coming back next Tuesday. We'd love for you to join us and ask us lots more questions. You can email me at loveyoumentary@gmail.com with your questions, and we'll make sure to get them on the show. And that's it. We don't have like an official sign off.
By going to
loveyoumentary.com,
or
you can check out unboxlove.com if you want to get a date in a box. And if you want to find out more about Laura, I hate how I say your name wrong every time. I dated a girl named Lauren.
Lauren?
Lauren. She was one of my, yeah. Anyway. So Laura, tell everybody where they can go find you besides here on Blab.
Oh, you can find me. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a marriage and family therapist. You can find me by going to Laura Heck Therapy at gmail.com. That's my email, and then laurahechtherapy.com is my website. Okay.
You guys, my love for you is real.
Yeah. I just thought of a name. We're going to call this Unfiltered Love.
Unfiltered love. Unprotected love? Yeah. No. Okay.
All right. Bye, Nate.
Okay. Bye. I'm stopping my.